Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Pages to Pixels podcast. I'm Keerthana,
I'm Rohan.
and this week we're talking about Christopher Nolan's Interstellar. It's the movie's 10th anniversary and it's being re released across the country. And so we thought it was a great film to revisit. Here is the IMDb logline. When Earth becomes uninhabitable in the future, a farmer and ex NASA pilot Joseph Cooper is tasked to pilot a spacecraft along with a team of researchers to find a new planet for humans. Um, what did you think of the movie? First impressions?
I want to actually talk about the log line real quick. First of all, accurate log line. I know sometimes the
Extremely.
IMDb
Yeah.
log lines tend to focus on one specific thing or usually only describe like the first act of the movie.
Hmm.
Uh, but also, an interesting thing with the log line is his name is Joseph. His first name is Joseph. I did not know that from the movie because I don't think
Neither
they
did
ever
I.
say his first name.
I thought it was a very well written logline, and I judged that by like, will this make me click on the Netflix tab if it was online?
Yeah,
And I think this one would.
yeah. I remember vividly watching this movie. Uh, 10 years ago in theaters when it came out. I went
Mhm.
with two of my friends, and uh, by the end of it, one of them was, I mean, he was full on bawling. Like,
Oh wow.
we watched it in IMAX, and I was having trouble hearing the dialogue because of how loud my friend sitting next to me was crying. And
Oh
just the
wow.
tears
on the side of my face.
coming down. Um, but I get why.
Yeah.
I thought it was an extremely immersive movie. All the space stuff was just beautiful, but then when the emotions hit, for me, they hit hard.
Hmm. Yeah. I didn't watch this movie actually when it came out. I watched it really late. I want to say I watched it in like 2015 or 2016 or something like that.
Mhm.
Um, and unfortunately, I didn't get to watch it in theaters. And I feel like that might have definitely taken away a lot from my experience because just even watching it like on TV, I could tell that this was meant for like an IMAX experience.
Yeah,
I will be rewatching it. So now, before we recorded this podcast, I did rewatch it. But I think after that second watch, I might want to go back to theaters and take a look because same thing. I was blown away by just how well the world was built and how well it was executed on
yeah,
camera because the story is not simple by any means.
no,
Um, and it was very it's clearly a very demanding screenplay. So it
yeah.
was really cool to see how much effort went into sort of building that up.
And it's kind of crazy that even 10 years later, this movie does not feel like it's aged. It feels like it could be released in 2024, not 2014.
Yeah. Well, the first thing is the central relationship is super strong, right? Like the
Oh
relationship
yeah.
between like Matthew McConaughey's character and his daughter. I don't know
Yep.
her real name. I mean, I know it's Murphy in the film.
Well,
I
there's
think
three. Well,
actors,
there's
yeah.
three actresses. I don't remember the name of the young girl, but I know Jessica Chastain
Hmm.
plays her when she is an adult, and then when she's old, I
Hmm.
believe that is Ellen Burstyn.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, I know the girl, I know the little like kid actor from Twilight.
Oh,
She's,
really?
yeah, I think she's the daughter.
Hmm.
Um, but no, my point being that I think any movie works well when the central relationship has like good conflict and like an actual arc.
Yep.
And I think this movie did so if we like strip down all the fantastical elements of this film, like it's still a story about a father and a daughter, and I think that's what works so effectively.
Yeah.
um yeah.
And I think that's the kind of stuff you need in sci-fi fantasy
Hmm.
type movies, and I think that's what really the franchises or the movies that really stick out and people remember are the
Hmm.
ones where you have strong characters and strong relationships between the characters. Um, you know, sci-fi obviously we have this, but there's also Star Wars. I know you can debate whether that's sci-fi or is it fantasy, I know that
Yeah.
that's a back and forth debate, but at the end of the day, a big chunk of why those movies succeed is because of the trio of Luke, Han, and Leia. Harry Potter,
Right.
it's Ron, Harry, Hermione.
Right.
Lord of the Rings, Frodo, and Sam.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, I definitely see the logic in that, because I think that's what you relate to. I mean, it's very unlikely that anyone is going to relate to what it feels like to be a pilot of a spacecraft, but everyone
mhm.
does know what it's like to have a father or a daughter.
Yeah,
Um,
I
yeah, I
think
mean, sorry, go ahead.
I think the one kind of exception to the rule is 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Hmm.
Now it's not a movie that I particularly am a fan of, but it's definitely something that uh, is regarded as one of not just the greatest sci-fi movies, but one of the greatest movies of all time. And you
Hmm.
can definitely see the influence that it had on Christopher Nolan when he made Interstellar.
Yeah, I was doing a little bit of research about this film and like kind of what went into it being made, and that movie was definitely thrown around a lot. Like the
Yeah.
name, I saw it pop up a lot. Another really interesting thing I read was that they tried to keep this movie as practical effects as possible. Like the graphics
Hmm.
don't look super aged because a lot of it was practical effects. But I mean, it must have been so tedious. Just thinking about it feels like it must have been such an exhausting process.
Yeah.
I'm glad they did it though.
Apparently they didn't use any green screen for this
But
movie.
but in space?
Created their own CGI effects program, especially for the movie, in order to create
Mhm.
the setting.
No, it is spectacular. There's no debating that. It does look very real and very well done. I mean, I know Tom Cruise talked about like wanting to go to space to film a shot or whatever. But if there was anyone else that I would think might want to do something like that, it would be Nolan.
And this is a movie that I absolutely love. And we talked about it before. There's the macro and the micro. I think all of my issues with the movie are kind of the micro issues, particularly in the first act. There's a lot of scenes where the entire scene is just exposition and
Hmm.
all the dialogue, particularly when they get to NASA at the beginning, it's just exposition, exposition, exposition. There's a couple of moments where, for example, the reveal of Cooper being uh, the ghost
Yeah.
is, I think when it happens, it's great on an emotional level. I do think the movie overplays its hand quite a bit when foreshadowing it. Even
Yeah.
there's even a line where someone says, "Oh, like parents are like the ghosts of the children's future." I don't know, something like that.
Yeah.
And it's a little like, okay, well, come on.
Yeah. Like
Uh,
give the audience some credit, right? Like don't spoon feed it. Um,
yeah, or don't foreshadow it so much because I think it just makes it a little obvious that
mhm.
that was what's gonna happen.
Yeah, I agree with you. I also thought it was definitely like, I mean, I know you were talking about exposition earlier on. So I also definitely found it to be pretty dense, even on the second watch this time around.
Yeah.
It felt like, I think for the lack of a better word, I'm going to say tedious. I feel like if you look away for a little bit, um, you might miss a lot.
Right.
And it takes a lot of like brain power to stay focused
Hmm.
for the entire length of a feature film, I think. And I'm not, how long is this? Is this
This is
let's
like,
see what
I want to say
the
it's like 2 hours 45 minutes, something like
yeah,
that. It's
see,
almost
yeah, it's
three.
2 hour, yeah, it's 2 hours and 49 minutes, and it definitely felt like that. Okay, well, some of it works because of the time dilation and stuff like that, but otherwise I did think that it felt long. Like I was trying to keep track of like, oh, like where's the second act, like where are we moving into the third act? And it
Mhm.
definitely kept dragging and dragging and dragging.
Yeah.
Um, that there was that, and then I think my other big gripe with this is the whole love is the solution angle. I know that so the most convincing argument I have found for the use of that tool is that someone told me that if it hadn't been for the love of her father, she wouldn't have pursued trying to figure out the solution.
Hmm.
And that's why this works. I don't know. I just feel like um, an emotional answer to a sci-fi problem felt a little. I didn't totally resonate with it.
See, I didn't necessarily read it that way. I still feel like at the end of the day, it was the data, and the equation and gravity is what ended up being. Which, by the way, I think if the movie Gravity wasn't a thing, I think this
Yeah,
movie could have easily been called Gravity.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. I
but
like how they use it as a plot device so often.
yeah,
Like, I think 3 times, 4 times. Yeah,
well, I mean, a lot of this movie is about gravity. Even the time dilation, it happens because there's more
of the
gravity.
gravity.
But yeah, I think what the movie should have done is tweak the dialogue a little bit. Where I think the answer isn't actually love, as if it was a scientific thing. I think it's more the answer is we should act with love, like
Yeah,
as
maybe.
humanity. That's
Yeah,
really, and that I felt like it. I felt like small tweaks of dialogue to give more clarity would have made that a little bit better.
I think so. I feel like I might have been maybe more forgiving towards it if it had been phrased a little differently. For me, like, I guess at that point, what happened was I've invested so much time in understanding the science behind all of this,
Yeah.
and all of it, and then the answer was quite simple. And I see that at a thematic level. Just maybe on a plot level, I felt a little dissatisfied. Maybe that's the real
Mhm.
crux of my issue here. But
Yeah.
otherwise, I think everything was enjoyable. I really, really liked the performances.
Yeah.
Um,
They were all great, especially Matthew
yeah,
McConaughey.
I know. And the thing is, it's like right from the start of the movie, like the stakes are always high in this movie.
Yeah.
Like your point A itself is like life or death, right? But they somehow still manage to elevate them.
Yeah, the stakes stop being about life or death and it just becomes about is he going to see his daughter again? And
Yeah,
somehow
yeah.
you are more bought into that than you are at the end of the world.
Also, I had completely forgotten that Timothée Chalamet was in this movie. So
Yep.
I turned it on and I'm like, is that actually him? And then I went and Googled it and I was like, oh shit, yeah, it really
Yeah, I
is.
think this is the one of the first things I saw him in. This movie had a lot, there were not a lot, but there was some controversy when it came out. Um, I think it was a little overblown. It was called liberal propaganda. Climate change is not something that everyone in this country
Oh,
or the world believes in, and
okay.
this movie was presenting it as kind of
Yeah.
a fact. I again, I don't think the controversy um, meant much. It was very critical, or not very critical, but there are moments where this movie actively criticizes war and global conflict, uh, and really, really, the conversation that became is the movie oversimplifies things,
Mm,
because it's hey, the movie is kind of saying when the world becomes like famine, then war stuff because that's what happened in the movie because they say that all the money that was going to the military ended up getting rerouted um,
mm,
to NASA uh, because he says, hey, like there's a moment where Michael Caine says every single item in here could have been a bullet, but instead it's being used to push science. And the criticism was that I don't think that probably wouldn't happen. If anything,
mhm.
if the world runs out of resources, there's going to be more war.
Yeah. Um, but it's also not a documentary. It doesn't
Yeah,
claim to
that's
be.
true. Yeah,
Um, Honestly, I thought the world building was extremely convincing here.
I did
Um,
too.
I fully bought into it. And the other thing is, a movie is going to last 2 hours, and in this case, 3 hours, right? I don't think it's possible to present any issue with all its layers and be accurate
Yeah.
about it completely.
Hmm.
If the theme of this movie, like you said earlier on, is to act with love, I think
Yeah.
that's the most succinct way to put it. And with I think with most movies, the plot is really a vehicle for the theme.
Yep.
So personally, I wouldn't read so far into a post-apocalyptic film and say that
Right.
it's propaganda for anything. So, it
I agree.
I I was blissfully unaware of this controversy
Mhm.
surrounding it.
I
Um,
also just think it's a bit refreshing to have a post-apocalyptic world that
yeah,
isn't violent.
yeah, it is. It really is. And to be fair, now that I think about it after you told me, yeah, there is one version of a post-apocalyptic world where all the money is rooted to conflict and people like kill each other over resources.
Yeah,
But
we saw
this
that with
doesn't.
Mad Max.
Yes, we did. But also, like, I actually don't think this is that much of an unrealistic portrayal of what might happen if resources started getting scarce, because there is a version of this where globally people realize that conflict isn't going to
Yeah.
solve the problem. And yeah, you're right. This is a refreshing take on like what that might look like.
Hmm.
Yeah, super interesting. I did not have this context at all, actually.
Yeah. This is one thing that the these conversations happened when the movie initially came out. I think time has treated this movie quite well, actually,
Yeah.
because when this movie initially came out, it
Hmm.
was very divisive.
Hmm.
Um, Many people considered it to be Nolan's worst movie. Some people
Really?
even wrote off Nolan as a director. They were like,
Oh,
"Yeah,
wow.
he's done after this. This is a career killer."
Hmm.
Um, and
Yeah, I don't.
obviously, that's not the case. And I think most people, when revisiting this movie now, uh, I think it's definitely stood the test of time. I see more positive things about it than negative.
I agree. In fact, in film school, got in an argument with one of our classmates because I didn't like the movie that much, and they loved it. Um, I think upon watching it again, it has aged well, and I think with more perspective that I got in life, I enjoyed it more.
Yeah,
I don't know what to say to any like climate change denier. Like, I don't think that's
yeah,
an argument to be had at all. Films, and especially sci-fi horror films, are very effective ways of starting conversations that are hard to start in real
yep.
life. And if this film did that, then good, you know?
There's also a bit of controversy in the way that this movie handles its female characters.
Mm.
Um, Particularly, well, not particularly. It's really Anne Hathaway and Jessica Chastain's characters. Um, I remember one big thing of Anne Hathaway's character was her choosing to go to not Miller's planet, they're Edmund's planet. Miller is the water planet. Man is
Hmm.
Matt Damon, and then Edmund,
Hmm.
who we never see.
Right.
There was there was people saying that that choice she should not have made that choice. I mean, ultimately they never ended up going. It was saying like it made her seem weak as a character.
I
Uh,
don't know about
Wanted
that.
to get your opinion on that.
I didn't read it as a weak choice. I just read it as a choice.
Yeah. Well, the
Um,
idea was she's trying to go to see her male lover and is prioritizing that over saving
ah,
humanity, which is kind of they're saying that that's what she's been doing the entire time. That was her character.
See, that's such a layered, complicated question now that you put it that way, because the thing is, the argument can be made that if she was doing that to see her male lover, that's still a choice that she made as an independent, free thinking woman.
Yeah,
Um,
and it is also
but
consistent with the theme.
it is,
Act
it
with love.
is. I agree. And the thing is, it's like, um, I don't know, because it's complicated, because let's flip if we would flip it around, would they say that if Matthew McConaughey had chosen his daughter instead of having to save the world, would that have been criticized as a selfish choice?
Hmm.
Um,
Which is what he was trying to
Also,
do because he was like,
yeah,
"Hey, we can't
pretty
visit
much,
every
right?
planet. We
Yeah,
can only visit 2 out of 3."
yeah.
So,
So you know what I mean? Like it's
mhm.
but the other layer to this that does make me wonder if there is like a sexist angle to this is that who was the screenwriter, right? Like who wrote her to be that
It was
way? Yeah,
the
it's
original was
Mhm.
Jonathan Nolan, and then Christopher Nolan did the rewrite on it.
Yeah, so see, then I might be more inclined to say, yeah, maybe like if a female writer was in the room, there might have been a different perspective, perhaps.
Mhm.
It's hard to say. For me, it didn't stick out because I think it was so consistent with the theme that I didn't feel like
Yeah,
it was an issue. Also, I think outside of that character choice, Anne Hathaway's character was pretty well written for me.
I
She
agree.
seemed like well-rounded. There were flaws, you know.
Mhm.
So
I
I
felt
think
so was Jessica
that's
Chastain.
yeah. So yeah, exactly. She was. So I wonder if we might be reading a little too much into this.
Okay, I just the only reason I bring it up is because again, this was when when the movie initially came out.
Mhm.
That was a big topic of conversation. With hey, does this movie handle its female characters well?
I
Uh,
mean, could they have handled it better? Yeah. Could they have written more of the scientists to be women? Yeah. But
mhm,
I actually thought this was a very I didn't have an issue with how
mhm,
they were written, and I know that normally I am the first one to run in and call it out. So no,
yeah.
this was a pleasant watch for me.
I mean, I don't have an issue with Jessica Chastain and her character. I mean, she ends up saving the world
Yeah,
because that's how smart she is. So,
yeah, no, it's I think all like I think if we bring it down to the basics, right? I thought the motivations made sense. They didn't feel
yep.
like lazy
Mhm,
motivations. So,
yeah.
um
I think the one small change I would have made with the Anne Hathaway moment is I wouldn't have made it a love interest because
yeah.
also I feel like the movie was also trying to push Cooper um,
I
and
definitely read it that way.
Fran,
Yeah.
uh, and even at the end he goes to see her, which that I don't like the fact that it's
Yeah.
all about trying to see his daughter again and it's easier, and then he's like, "All right, I'm out." um,
Yeah.
but
That was
I think
a
I would have
yeah.
changed it from a male lover to someone who's also like a family member, close friend,
Yeah.
preferably a female family
Mhm.
member. I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, I do see the layer that it adds when he's shown to be her romantic interest, but no, it didn't really stick out to me
Yeah.
as a big issue at all.
When the film was first conceived, it was originally supposed to be directed by Steven Spielberg. How
Yep.
different do you think the film would have been?
Oh, I think it would have been a significantly different film.
Yeah. Think very
Um,
different.
yeah, I imagine a lot of the signs would have been stripped down, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think
Um,
Nolan. I agree. I think Nolan definitely goes into the bigger sci-fi stuff. Not that Spielberg hasn't done that stuff. I mean, he did
yeah, yeah,
things like Close Encounters of the Third Kind. They're very different filmmakers.
yeah,
Ultimately, I am glad that this movie ended up with Christopher Nolan.
right.
Especially after having seen it, I just can't imagine anyone else doing this movie and having it be done better. Now, I did read that original script because Jonathan Nolan did the original script that Spielberg was going to direct.
Hmm.
Um, very, very different script. Uh, in that uh, Murph is a boy, actually.
Hmm.
I like the change of them making it, of making Murph a female character.
Hmm.
And then they actually, Cooper does go to a planet, and there's multiple drafts of it. I ended up reading both drafts. In
Hmm.
one of the drafts, he actually does run into aliens.
Oh,
Um,
wow,
and
that's
in,
interesting.
yeah, in neither draft, though, does he actually make it back to
Okay.
Murph. Yeah, and Murph ends up dying. I think if that script had been made with Spielberg, I don't think the movie would have been as good or interesting.
I agree. I don't know. It would have been a widely different movie. I am kind of curious to see what that would look like. But I'm very happy with the one that came out.
I agree. I think Nolan is currently the best event filmmaker.
Hmm.
Like all of his movies just feels like it's a big deal, even
Yeah.
though, with the exception of the Batman movies, they're not really franchise movies. But like Oppenheimer made almost $1 billion,
Right.
um, and it feels like you're watching something epic in every single one of his movies. I I mean, Spielberg, Hall of Fame, Mount Rushmore of directors. I haven't been feeling that way lately with his
Yeah.
films.
No, I know what you mean. I think the big difference for me is I know, yes, you're talking about like how all these films like feel like an event, like an epic. I also think that at the end of the day, they feel like a person made them.
Yeah,
And I think that to me is really, really important, especially in an era of like, you know, franchise films being pumped out one after the other.
after the Endurance blows up and Matt Damon's character dies, when
Yeah.
he has to dock the smaller ship onto
Yeah.
the main one.
Yep.
What a great scene.
I expected it to happen. I expected that he would be successful in making it happen,
Yeah,
but I was at the edge of my seat. It was
yeah,
very, very well done. So
just
tight.
everything. Yeah,
Yeah.
everything coming together. So like the visuals, the acting, the music. I love
Mhm.
the fact that there's no sound in space.
Yeah. I know that the sound design in this film has been very, very well received. It's
But even that was a point of uh, controversy when it came out originally, because people did not like the sound design. They thought that
that's
the
so, but it's so
music drowned
smart.
out the dialogue.
I don't agree then because I just that's it's so smart though because like if you think about the silence and space and everything it does like the music and the sound design does so much to keep you immersed in the world.
I
Um,
agree.
it really elevated everything for me.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right.
All right.
Oh, with that said, what would you say is your standout element?
See, this is so because we had this conversation right before we started recording, and this time you stole mine because you said that sound was your favorite. I'm just going to but I will say that the world building was my favorite element if I was not allowed to pick sound. And I'm saying that because I think in stories like this, it's very easy to be pulled out of the story because of like one tiny error or like a dialogue problem
Yeah.
or like a badly edited scene, you know. None of
Mhm.
that was there, and I stayed immersed into the world. I thought that despite the fact that it was like information heavy, I still understood like what was happening in this world, what the stakes were, and I bought into it. So I thought the world building was great. Um, yeah, no, everything about it was immersive, and I really enjoyed it.
I think my standout element has to be, I know you said sound. I specifically wanted to say the score. There's so much variety to it. There's moments in space where it has like a haunting kind of theme, which actually the stuff where they're just in space reminds me a lot of 2001's A Space Odyssey. But then there's also moments um, where it's super emotional. I think of Cornfield Chase. Uh,
Hmm.
that moment at the very end, the track
Yeah.
where we're going. No Time for Caution is what's used during the docking sequence. Uh, that's just epic orchestral.
Yeah.
And Hans Zimmer is great, but there's just something about when Hans Zimmer works with Nolan. I feel
Mhm.
like I feel like they're just next level. And no disrespect to Ludwig Göransson, who worked with Nolan on Tenet
Mhm.
and also Oppenheimer, but I really want Hans Zimmer to come back and like work with Nolan again because I think every time they work together, they create uh, something special. And I mean, I know he's busy with Dune. That's the reason why he hasn't been able to work with Nolan for the past two movies.
Mhm.
But hopefully soon he's
They
able
did
to.
announce that Tom Holland's Zendaya film, right, with Nolan, that's going to be his next.
Yeah, Spider-Man 4.
um, no, I'm excited to see what they come up with. Um,
For the record, it's actually not Spider-Man 4.
yeah.
I know you know, just in case someone else was listening to this and was like, oh shoot, no one's doing Spider-Man 4.
But don't you want to be the person that started that rumor?
So, as a reminder, or if you're new, we do our scores on the script coverage scale of pass, consider, and recommend. This is not an actual recommendation, it's just how we score things. With that said, how would you score Interstellar?
I'm going to say recommend. I think if I hadn't rewatched it over the last couple of days, I would have said just like a consider or a strong consider, but it has rewatch value too. So recommend.
Yeah, yeah, this is an easy recommend for me.
Mhm.
I loved this movie when I first watched it. Haven't seen it in 10 years. Rewatching it still holds up. Uh,
Yeah. If I had to say that, oh, I wish this one thing was different, I would just say the runtime. If there was a way to condense this, I think it would have been very cool.
mhm. Yeah, I don't know how that would be done because there's
Yeah.
so much happening, but
True. Yeah, no, I actually don't know what I would cut. I would just, this would be one of the things where you hand it to the editor and say, I want this to be 2 hours long. Good luck.
so if you like Interstellar or other movies like it, or if you want something similar, what would you recommend to the audience?
So I'm going to say Arrival. This is the Amy Adams one. It was a fantastic film. We studied this during our when we had a class on adaptation because Arrival was adapted from a short story called The Story of Your Life
Yep.
by Ted Chiang, I think. And I would, while I recommend Arrival as a movie in this space that people will enjoy, I think that short story is brilliant. It is one of the few times where I liked the material, like the source material more than the actual adaptation. Um, it's a
Nice.
great short story. It's like 30 pages long. It's worth
Okay.
everyone's time. Yeah.
Yeah, I gotta read it. I have seen the movie, love the movie. Haven't read the shorts.
Yeah, I think the difference between the movie and the short was that in the short, you know how they play with time, right? And how like it's supposed to let you see the future or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, Weirdly, I don't know how to say, like, I think the best way I can describe it is when I read the short, I felt that. Like I
Okay.
felt like the full circle moment where like I fully understood like how this learning of this language thing like made it possible for her to see the future.
Mhm.
That's why I liked it so much. Yeah.
So I'm gonna recommend Tenet. This is also a Nolan movie. I think it came out in 2020. Did not do so well at the box office, but that was in the right in the middle of COVID. That was not even like the vaccine wasn't even out. So I mean, I thought the movie was a lot of fun when I watched it. I didn't really understand it much, and then I watched it again when it came on digital. This time with subtitles,
Yeah.
and I liked it even more.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, I just think it's another movie that where he plays around with time. It is funny though because in Interstellar he specifically says, no, you cannot move backwards in time, only forward.
Yep.
And then Tenet is all about people moving. I just
That's an
think it's
interesting. Yeah,
yeah.
go ahead, go ahead. No, no, go ahead, go ahead.
I just thought it was a ton of fun. One of the most creative action movies of the past however many years. The editing work is phenomenal, where you see people moving forward but then also backward at the same time.
That's an interesting recommendation. I remember watching it. I actually don't remember loving it at all. So I'm happy to revisit it if you want to have that conversation.
Yeah,
Um,
I would recommend it. I think
yeah,
that's definitely a movie that's better on the second watch. But
yeah. I mean, I'll give it a shot because I watched it during the thick of COVID, and I didn't love it at all actually. So yeah, I'll go back and rewatch it. But I do remember that the narrative structure is like almost like an A, like the shape, if you were to plot it. You know how like Memento is like a C or like a U?
I
This one
guess
felt like an A. Well, I'll rewatch it and then we'll talk about it.
okay.
Yeah. All right. What else have you been watching?
Oh, I watched Scoop recently.
Hmm.
It's a Netflix miniseries about um I can't remember the name of the reporter, but a reporter that was falsely imprisoned for for being for being involved in uh in organized crime. Now she was
Hmm.
completely innocent.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, the series is really good. It's created by Hansen Mehta. Uh, always love his stuff, and it's kind of all about the importance of journalism, but also about how journalists are being attacked, and the government is cracking down on the free press. A little slow in the beginning, but recommend it because it's, I think, very important and very powerful.
Is it streaming on something?
Netflix.
Oh, got it. Cool. Yeah, no, sounds like it's definitely worth a watch. I've been watching I've been like down this like short film spiral. Just been watching like random ones here and there. One stood out to me. It's called Devi. It's on YouTube actually. It's really nice. It's got Kajol, Shruti Hassan, and a bunch of other very well established actors. Yeah, it's really cool. It's totally worth a watch. It's a little old, but it's I think it's 15 minutes long and it's beautiful.
And that's it for this week's episode of Pages Pixels. I'm Rohan.
I'm Keerthana, and we will see you again next week with a brand new episode. Thank you for tuning in.
Thank you.